On this Thursday night, all defendants guilty. Justice and jubilation. How Gisèle Pelicot became a symbol of strength for sexual assault survivors around the world. Seismic cabinet shuffle imminent. The deepening political chaos and the long list of cabinet vacancies following those high-profile resignations. Extradited. Accused healthcare CEO killer Luigi Mangione facing new federal murder charges after being transferred to New York City. And breaking down barriers.
I was brought up in a world where if you experienced these issues meant you weren't working hard enough.
The Manitoba Wellness Program, helping those who take care of the land take better care of themselves.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. A court in France handed down dozens of sentences in a disturbing rape trial that gained international attention. The woman at the center of it, Gisèle Pelicot, thanked supporters today as her ex-husband was given 20 years in prison for orchestrating and participating in her mass rape over the course of almost a decade. 50 other men were also found guilty. Pelicot says she respects the verdict and that she has no regrets about making the trial public. Her decision and courage is helping to shift the shame about sexual assault. Remdond Shannon has tonight's top story and a warning. This report includes graphic details.
Gisèle Pelicot leaves court as a victim, but also as an icon. Raped by dozens of men over almost a decade, she decided the world should know, waiving her right to anonymity.
By opening the doors to this trial, I wished for society to join in the debates that were held. I never regretted this decision.
Judges found Pelicot's now ex-husband Dominique and all 50 other men on trial guilty. 46 of them raped her. Dominique would invite the strangers to do so after putting sedatives in his wife's food, and he filmed it all. The other men were convicted of raping another woman, attempted rape and sexual assault.
I'm thinking about the unrecognized victims whose stories often remain in the shadows. I want you to know that we share the same battle.
Dominique Pelicot was sentenced to the maximum 20 years in prison. The other men between 3 and 15 years. Some had sentences suspended and were freed.
I am very, very disappointed. The message the verdict sends is that we don't give a damn about the victims.
Aged between 27 and 74, the men included firefighters, soldiers and a journalist. All lived within a 50-kilometre radius of Pelicot's village. Most have children. Police say 22 other suspects have yet to be identified. The case has shaken France, but these crimes are not uniquely French.
And this is a massive reminder to anyone who's ever been subjected to sexual or gender-based violence. 100% of the shame belongs to the people who perpetrated the violence.
French police have now placed Dominique Pelicot under formal investigation for 2 other cold cases from the 1990s, a rape and murder and an attempted rape.
Remdond, Gisèle Pelicot's decision to go public has really been fundamental to making the world aware of these terrible crimes.
Yes, and it was just last year that the law was changed in Canada. Crown prosecutors are now obligated to give adult alleged victims of sexual assault the option to lift a publication ban on their case. Carolyn?
Remdond Shannon in London, thank you. If you or someone you know needs help, you can go to sheltersafe.ca. There, you'll find all the provincial and territorial resources available to connect women and their children with the nearest shelter. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party are preparing for a significant cabinet shuffle tomorrow after a chaotic week that started with Chrystia Freeland's shock resignation on Monday. Ottawa MP David McGuinty is expected to take over public safety from new Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc. And Toronto MP Nathaniel Erskine-Smith will take over the housing portfolio from Sean Fraser, who also resigned Monday. Erskine-Smith previously said he will not run again in the next election. As David Akin reports, it's unclear if the shuffle will help improve Trudeau's political fortunes.
Monica, did you get a photo?
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau's new finance minister, Dominic LeBlanc, was in his own New Brunswick riding Friday for a funding announcement.
I'm really happy to be here.
But the questions quickly turned to the turmoil back in Ottawa.
Does Trudeau have the full support of his cabinet to stay on as Prime Minister?
Yes.
No surprise
Simply yes?
LeBlanc would answer like that, but other Liberals?
It's just simply not the case. And it's simply not the case because other cabinet ministers have signaled, told me, and echoed to me differences with the Prime Minister.
Wayne Long is one of as many as 45 Liberal MPs calling for Trudeau to step down. And he believes that number is only going to get bigger, possibly with some cabinet ministers.
This is not right that out of 36 or 37 or 38 or whatever the number is, cabinet ministers we have, that nobody has stepped up to Chrystia Freeland's defense.
Former cabinet minister Catherine McKenna put a call out on social media this week saying, quote, every Liberal MP should be calling on the Prime Minister to resign. And by every MP, I include every minister. Also today, LeBlanc ended rumors that former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney would come into cabinet as the finance minister.
When the Prime Minister asked me to be the finance minister, he told me that I was going to be the finance minister in his government until the next election.
The Justice Minister, Arif Irani, was the only other minister with a media event Thursday, and he refused to say if he agreed or not with Long and McKenna.
So what I'll say in respect of sort of what's been transpiring over the last few days in Ottawa is that it's ultimately decisions will be taken by the parties that are involved.
And we will find out who else is taking on new cabinet roles tomorrow, when Prime Minister Trudeau is expected to unveil what sources say will be a major cabinet realignment, possibly involving up to a dozen new cabinet roles. Carolyn.
David Akin in Ottawa, thank you. Alberta's police watchdog says the RCMP officers involved in the arrest of a First Nations chief did nothing wrong. Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation Chief Alan Adam was arrested in a Fort McMurray parking lot in 2020 over an expired license plate. He suffered severe cuts and bruises to his face. Dashcam video showed officers tackling him to the ground, punching him and putting him in a chokehold. The watchdog's final report found no evidence of racist treatment or unlawful conduct by the officers. It also says Adam was agitated and made it clear he would get physical. The report goes on to say that despite Adam's belief he was targeted because he was Indigenous, his past interactions with police may have given him a different impression of the incident. Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO, has been extradited to New York to face murder charges. The 26-year-old was escorted to a federal courthouse by an unusually large police presence and New York City's mayor. Mangione is now being charged with federal murder and stalking crimes, in addition to several state charges he was already facing. Mangione was arrested in Pennsylvania 5 days after Brian Thompson was shot and killed on a Manhattan street. Mangione's next federal court appearance is scheduled for January 18th. Also in New York, a U.S. citizen has admitted to running a secret police station for the Chinese government. Chen Jinping pleaded guilty to acting as an agent of a foreign government. Prosecutors say he and co-defendant Lu Jiangwang operated an illegal branch of China's Ministry of Public Security in Manhattan's Chinatown. They allegedly helped identify Chinese pro-democracy activists living in the U.S. before being arrested last year. Chen faces up to 5 years in prison. Lu has pleaded not guilty and is awaiting trial. In Washington, last-minute negotiations are underway in an attempt to keep the U.S. government running. Democrats and Republicans had agreed on a plan to fund the government into the new year, but then Elon Musk weighed in. Jackson Proskow reports on the influence the billionaire insider could have on a possible government shutdown.
On Capitol Hill, a rush to avoid a nightmare before Christmas, as Republicans tried to stop a government shutdown caused by their own internal strife.
We're focused on making sure that doesn't happen, but, we're not the only ones that control that.
It wasn't supposed to be like this. Democrats and Republicans had a deal, a 1,500-page spending bill to keep funding the government through March. Wednesday night, billionaire Elon Musk weighed in with more than 100 posts on his X platform, calling the plan criminal and pork. Soon after, President-elect Donald Trump dropped his support, and so Republicans walked away.
He is willing to shut the government down because of of the words of an eccentric, weird gazillionaire.
Musk has been tasked with finding government efficiency in the second Trump administration. His outsized role as an unelected advisor hasn't gone unnoticed.
President Musk to come in at the last moment and blow up the deal is just intolerable.
You thought you voted for Trump. You didn't actually. You voted for billionaires to run the show.
Trump has also muddied the waters, at one point demanding the elimination of the government's borrowing limit to allow for unlimited spending, before agreeing to a Republican compromise that would fund the government until March with a 2-year suspension of the borrowing limit.
Everyone is sick and tired of overspending.
It all portends a rocky start to the new Congress and presidency, with the party in power potentially at war with itself and under the thumb of a man who spent millions supporting Trump and Republicans. Not everyone is upset with Elon Musk's growing influence on Capitol Hill. In fact, several Republicans in Congress are now suggesting Musk should be selected as the next Speaker of the House, showing just how far the party may be willing to bend to the billionaire. Carolyn?
Jackson Proskow in Washington, thank you. Vladimir Putin's year-end media event coming up. The Russian president's talking points and the key takeaways. Yemen's Houthi rebels released footage of 2 hypersonic missiles being launched at Israel overnight. One of them was intercepted and fell on an Israeli school. No one was injured. Israel responded with a series of airstrikes on ports and energy infrastructure in Houthi-held parts of Yemen, killing at least 9 people. Israel's prime minister says after Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Assad regime in Syria, the Houthis are nearly the last remaining arm of Iran's axis of evil. In Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin held his annual year-end media event for the nation. Journalists and citizens had to submit their questions ahead of time, and the marathon affair covered a broad range of topics. Among them, Putin said he's open to compromises on the war in Ukraine. Russian forces currently occupy about 1/5 of the country. As Kyle Benning reports, Putin says his proposal could be a starting point for an end to the conflict.
It's arguably Vladimir Putin at his most comfortable, holding court over a live 4-hour spectacle tightly controlled on Russian state TV, with Putin at the center of Russian life. This year, acknowledging things he might have done differently. Saying that Russia should have started its special military operation in Ukraine, its invasion, earlier, and been better prepared. Ukraine says around 200,000 Russian soldiers have been killed, with more than 500,000 injured. Russia suffered more casualties in November than any month since its invasion began. As the 3rd anniversary approaches, Putin signaled a readiness to talk. Politics is the art of compromise, he said. The Kremlin has always been willing to negotiate with Ukraine and the West. With just 1 month to go before the inauguration of Donald Trump, diplomatic positions may soon shift.
That Putin is not adequate and he's very dangerous for everybody. He loves to kill.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met Thursday with European leaders in Brussels as Western allies look to shore up support.
And I think if we win, I think we're going to get it resolved very quickly.
Putin questions Zelensky's leadership, but says he's willing to hold peace talks with Trump, who he claims he has not spoken with in 4 years.
We are not going to talk to Zelensky, who is apparently now an illegitimate president because he hasn't held presidential elections, and that Putin is now essentially waiting for Trump to become president. So everything we see has to be understood through the lens of this great spectacle that Putin loves engaging with.
Putin also threatened Ukraine's capital could be a target if Ukraine continues to fire U.S. and British long-range weapons into Russia. Let them name a location in Kyiv to place their air and missile defenses, and we will hit it, he says, touting Russia's hypersonic ballistic missiles. Putin also claims he has not spoken with ousted Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, despite Moscow supporting Assad's evacuation and his family's asylum claim. The fall of the Syrian regime, Putin says, is no failure of Russia's. Kyle Benning, Global News, Toronto.
Police in Spain may have solved a murder case with help from an unlikely source, Google Maps. Google's Street View vehicle, with cameras mounted on it, was taking photos in a town in northern Spain earlier this year. Some of the images captured appear to show a man stuffing a large white plastic bag into the trunk of a car. Police say the photos were part of the evidence that helped them arrest 2 suspects in the case. Ahead, the first American severely sick with bird flu, and the drastic move by California to help minimize the spread in cattle. People in New Brunswick are being encouraged to mask up for holiday gatherings as an outbreak of whooping cough continues to grow. The province's acting chief medical officer of health says there are now 831 cases of the disease in New Brunswick. That's a 489% spike since an outbreak was declared in August. Cases of COVID-19, the flu, and RSV are also on the rise. People are being urged to wash their hands regularly, ensure vaccinations are up to date, and stay at home when sick. California has declared a state of emergency as the number of bird flu cases continues to grow. The virus is sweeping through cattle herds, and 34 people have become sick, most of them dairy farm workers. So far, the human illnesses have been mild, but on Wednesday, America's first severe case was announced. Catherine Warren joins us now with the details and what this means for the risk in Canada. Catherine.
Carolyn, the Louisiana patient was hospitalized in critical condition, and the Centers for Disease Control believes the infection occurred after the person had contact with an infected backyard flock. The CDC says this is the first time a situation like this has happened. The virus has been circulating among dairy cattle in 16 states, in addition to poultry flocks. California declared a state of emergency as a precautionary measure to help contain the virus's spread.
The state of emergency is, in my view, emblematic of a recognition that things are getting worse and not better.
Infectious disease researcher Matthew Miller says the legislative move can help governments prepare.
It is a tool that gives the government additional powers to respond more effectively, and also leverages dedicated financial resources that can be used to support responding to the situation.
Canada's chief public health officer says milk surveillance programs have shown optimistic results, that the spread seen in the U.S. is not happening here to the same degree.
I think over 1,200 samples have been tested and they've all been negative. And they're now testing raw milk from the points of milk collection before pasteurization to test for the presence of H5. And they have not found any viral fragments in the milk.
But Dr. Teresa Tam stresses caution is key.
Once I think the virus starts spreading, it may be difficult to control.
Catherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
Some Amazon drivers hit the picket lines in the U.S. today in what their union calls the largest strike against the company in American history. Workers walked off the job at 7 facilities in 4 states over what they say is a breakdown in contract negotiations. Amazon says it expects operations to be largely unaffected by the job action. The striking workers account for less than 1% of Amazon's U.S. workforce. Fighting the stigma. Next, a Manitoba farmer's mission to help others get the support that changed his life. The Prince and Princess of Wales are wishing everyone a happy Christmas and New Year in their holiday card. It was revealed on social media, with the royal couple using a picture taken from a video released when Kate announced the end of her chemotherapy treatment in September. Well, farmers, just like anyone, are not immune to mental health challenges, but farming is a craft that is also highly rooted in tradition. So seeking help can be challenging. A program specifically tailored to farmers is trying to break down barriers and make it easier for those who take care of the land to also take better care of themselves. Daisy Welk explains.
Long days, hard, volatile work, oftentimes handled alone. A troubling reality faced by many farmers in the country.
We were experiencing some significant difficulties, and that, I believe, and combined with the work I was doing, just kind of pushed me towards the abyss.
Former Hog producer Jerry Friesen was diagnosed with anxiety and depression in 2004. He didn't tell many at the time.
I was brought up in a world where if you experienced these issues meant you weren't working hard enough or your faith wasn't strong enough. And so what I was doing is I was trying to work my way out of that.
Out of his experience, Friesen helped establish the Manitoba Farmer Wellness Program, which offers free counseling for producers, their families, and employees. That program has now gained charitable status, opening up more funding opportunities for the organization, which more people have been using.
Our numbers in the second year doubled from the first year, and now in the third year we're already at 150% of what we were last year, and the year isn't over yet.
Friesen says it's good to see the uptick. Data cited by the Manitoba Farmer Wellness Program shows 58% of farmers meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder and 35% for depression. Many don't seek help due to stigma. The program is there to change that.
Everybody feels so much better afterwards. Just talking about a challenge that you might have just takes the weight off.
Roberta Galbraith, a Western Manitoba producer, says farmers can sign up for an appointment quickly and confidentially online, often hearing back from their counselor of choice in less than 2 days. It's an option Friesen wishes he had all those years ago and encourages those sitting on the fence to try with a message of encouragement.
Number one, you are not alone. Number two is it's more than okay to reach out for help. And number three is there's hope and there's relief.
Daisy Welk, Global News, Winnipeg.
And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Tonight's Your Canada is the Canadian Pacific Kansas City holiday train passing through Banff, Alberta. We love to see your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow.